So, good evening, everyone. I hope you are doing well. Thank you for joining in with Clarksville Highway tonight. I want to get rid of a couple of things on the screen, kind of for us to get started. So, I don't know. It looked to me like the screen went blank during that countdown for a little bit. I don't know what was happening with that, but hopefully everything is working okay now. So, if you are listening, and things are not working correctly and you know my cell phone numbers, send me a text. But I think everything is good. So tonight we're going to kind of continue in a study that we started last week. The title is not specific to me. I can't remember, honestly, I can't remember where I first heard it. But it's the idea of roots, ripples, and reference points. And as we were talking last week, we were talking about roots and how it's kind of necessary for us to have roots in life. I was going to show you a picture if I could get it on the screen. This is just a picture from Facebook. I mean from YouTube, I think. So it's not. Let me see if I can show this. It's just kind of this tree that is, you see it standing, you're standing by the roots. And I think that's why when you start talking about roots, that's why roots are so very important, because they represent those things in life that give us stability, that help us when, the winds of life are blowing and things are happening. We need things that give us stability and help us keep anchored. So for that, we talked about roots. And tonight we're going to talk about ripples. And again, not unique to me. I know you've probably heard many lessons before about ripples. I found this little short video on YouTube, and it's just this video of honestly nothing except just ripples. I mean, when you put you drop, it's a drop of water going into water and it creates those ripples. I don't know what you think about when you see those. I think about probably had some volume with that as I was cutting that YouTube video off. Sorry about that. So you might think in terms of, when you throw a rock into the water and it hits and you get the sound, and then the ripples go out in different directions, and they'll go for a while until they disappear. I thought about when I used to trout fish on the Caney Fork, and you would see the fish come up and you'd see the ripple, and so you'd know that there would be a fish working in that area, so you would use that area to try to catch the fish. And kind of the point of this as we go through, there are things that we do in life that create a ripple effect. And one of the first things we think about are just our actions with our consequences, and we'll talk about that. But I also want to talk about it with reference to people, and I hope that will make sense to you as we talk through that. Hey, if you've got comments, throw them on Facebook, or you can throw them on the YouTube channel. If you know my email or my phone number, just send me a text. That might be the easiest way. I would love to find a way to make this more interactive. That's something I want to work on in the next few weeks. So if you have good input about that, I'd love to hear it. But when you throw a rock in the water, a big rock makes a big ripple, right? And a small rock usually makes a smaller ripple, but they all make some kind of ripple. And as we go through life and we start making decisions, whether big decisions or smaller decisions, it creates this ripple effect in our life. So, sometimes you think about those ripples and they only last for a couple of moments, and that could very well be true. And maybe you make a decision in life that lasts for a very short period of time. Maybe you make a decision in life that lasts for a much longer period of time. I mean, when I think about decisions that I've made, I'm sorry that something on YouTube was really messing me up there. When I think about decisions I've made, some of those decisions are pretty short-lived, and some of those decisions are really long-lived. I mean, they're longer-term decisions. So last week we talked about roots, having stability. This week we're going to talk about decisions and ripples, and generally when we make a good decision, good consequences follow. And generally, when we make a bad decision, bad consequences follow. And I say generally because, sometimes good things happen to bad things happen to good people. It's more like a principle. It's not a hard, fast rule. You can make a very good decision sometimes, and maybe because of other people or circumstances or things that you didn't really take into consideration, you made the best decision you could make at the moment that you made it. Um, and maybe there were unintended consequences about that. And it's again, it's just it's kind of a principle, but because within that principle you always have this element of God, and sometimes uh God can make ripples bigger, God can make ripples smaller, God can make ripples disappear if he chooses. But when you think about ripples, I tried to look ripples up in a concordance. I couldn't find any verse in the Bible that said anything about ripples. So I started to look up consequence. So I thought maybe that's a good word instead of ripples. The New International Version has a couple of verses where it translates consequence, but the text literally says to lift up his sin, or so it doesn't really use a word for consequence, although maybe that's a good understanding of what it means. You might think of things like fruit, a tree by its fruit, or maybe wages or effects or reward, um, something along those lines. There's this verse in Proverbs. It says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding, and in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight." So maybe you think about that. There's a principle there that we could think about in terms of ripples, that in all of your ways and in every one of your choices, you acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. If he will kind of make the ripples positive and make the ripples work to your advantage, possibly. But you go to another verse. I got a couple of verses pulled up here that I just wanted to share with you. Uh, this is Proverbs chapter 1, verse 29. "Since they hated knowledge and did not choose to fear the Lord, since they would not accept my advice and spurned my rebuke, they will eat the fruit of their ways, and will be filled with the fruit of their schemes. For their waywardness of the simple will kill them, and the complacency of fools will destroy them. But whoever listens to me will live in safety and be at ease without fear of harm." So there you kind of have both effects of good ripples, bad ripples. We have this choice in life of whether to serve God or not. And then as we go through life with that choice, then there are circumstances and consequences and things that happen because of our decisions. Now, I don't mean by that if you're following God, that every ripple that comes along in life would be necessarily a good ripple. I mean, there are things that happen in all of our lives, and maybe they're not even the result of a decision that we made. Maybe they're not even something that's within the circle of our control. Maybe it's the decision of another person who affects us. Maybe it's someone else's free will. Maybe it's a circumstance in life. Maybe a natural disaster. It could be a lot of different things. But right now we're just kind of talking about the ripples of our own types of decisions. Choices lead usually to a specific kind of result. And so if you choose not to fear God, if you choose not to accept his counsel, it's embodied in that Proverbs wisdom, right? Then his correction or his rebuke may be present. And sometimes for those who are following God, sometimes we need that correction and rebuke to help us keep on the right path. I mean, I think about being a kid, and so there were times that I am sure that I needed some rebuke and some discipline so that I would learn the right principles and the right things that I'm supposed to do. So, whoever listens to wisdom listens to God, and the fruit, the reward, the earnings of that is our salvation. This verse in Proverbs, for a man's ways are in full view of the Lord, and he examines all his paths. And the evil deeds of a wicked man ensnare him, and the cords of his sin hold him fast. He will die for lack of discipline, led astray by his own great folly. So if you leave us to ourselves and we just kind of go off and do the things that we want to do, then without some kind of discipline, some rebuke, without some kind of guidance, we kind of wander off in the wrong kind of decisions, and the wrong kind of decisions lead to the wrong kind of ripples. Now, I love this verse in Proverbs. It's very simple, but it's a great verse. Can a man scoop fire into his lap without his clothes being burned? Can a man walk on hot coals without his feet being scorched? And this is in the context of a passage in Proverbs that is about adultery, and it can be seen as adultery in the sense of adultery with another woman. Sometimes wisdom is personified as a woman in Proverbs, and folly is personified as a prostitute. So maybe it's Solomon talking about wisdom and folly, maybe actual adultery. Either way, the principle is still the same. If you put a scoop of fire into your lap and you're wearing clothes, chances are your clothes are going to be burned, right? And if you walk on hot coals, chances are your feet are going to be scorched. It's those consequences that come along as a result of our choices, and those are the ripples. But the thing is, even with the ripples just don't affect us. The ripples affect everyone else who is around us. So there's this other passage in Isaiah, chapter 4:22. There is no peace, says the Lord, for the wicked. So the wicked have no peace. And then finally, this verse in Galatians chapter 6. Let the one who has taught the word share all good things with the one who teaches. Do not be deceived. God is not mocked, for whatever one sows, that will he also reap. For the one who sows to his own flesh will from the flesh reap corruption, but the one who sows to the Spirit will from the Spirit reap eternal life. And let us not grow weary of doing good, for in due season we will reap if we do not give up. So then, as we have opportunity, let us do good to everyone, especially to those who are of the household of faith. So if you just kind of step back from that for a moment and you start thinking about consequences and decisions, and decisions have consequences which lead to ripples. And God is very forgiving, and he's a very forgiving God. This is not a theological statement as much as it's a statement from observation. And it seems to me that many times God will forgive sin, but many times he doesn't forgive. Forgive's not the right word. He doesn't remove the consequences of our bad decisions. And I think sometimes it's because that's part of the discipline and the instruction of God for helping us, kind of navigate life and making good decisions. So as you go through in life, there's this ripple effect of consequences from decisions, which is what we normally, when we start talking about ripples, that's what we are normally talking about. We're talking about consequences of decisions. And I wanted to touch on that for a few minutes. Let me see how I'm doing with time here. I wanted to touch on that for a few minutes because I think it's really important that we understand that that's part of the ripple effect, and part of that ripple effect goes out and it affects other people. But I really wanted to talk about this idea of ripples from a different perspective, and not the perspective of choices and consequences. Although that's true, which is why I wanted to cover that for a second, I wanted to talk about something a little different with respect to ripples. Because what I really wanted to talk about is our connection with people. We don't live a life inside of a vacuum. everything that we do in life, for the most part, has some type of ripple effect to other people. And a lot of the things that other people who are around us do in life have this ripple effect toward us. So I had to get a drink right there. So, and I was thinking about that this week in a couple of areas, and then there were a couple of things happened this week that has me thinking more about it. So if you look at your own life, and I hope I don't bore you with this because I'm sharing this with you in a way that I hope um, you start to reflect on this in your own life, because there are people who have influenced and shaped me as I have gone and traveled through life. I mean, somebody was asking me today how old I was, and to be very honest with you, I had I had to pause for a moment and think, okay, how old am I? And then I did the math really quickly in my head. Wait a minute, I got a message here. Let me read this. Yeah. So Jeff Goldtrap, yes, that'll be wonderful, man. If you're listening, and howdy back to Fayetteville. So the question you asked me, that's a yes. So you start thinking about people who have had an influence on you. And if I were going to start listing people, I mean, obviously I would start. I mean, I'd start with my parents because of all the people who have influenced me in life, they've probably influenced me the most. I guess you can list a lot of reasons for that, but I've known them the longest, right? They've been the ones who've been taking care of me the longest. And you look at 59, you think, man, that's depending on where you are in life, 59 either looks like a long way or a short way, right? But you think, okay, so mom and dad had this influence on me, and so for right now, I'm just talking about spiritual influence, okay? But when they had a spiritual influence on me, the spiritual influence just didn't start with them. There was the mom's parents that, in our family, and that's the wording I'll use, we called them Daddy Bill and grandmother, right? So Daddy Bill and grandmother had an effect. And then, dads, we called his mom and dad Mama and Papa. So they had an effect. Now Papa didn't become a Christian much later in life. I think he was probably close to 70, if I remember right. If Dad's listening, he may send me a little Facebook message or something. But I think he was close to 70, if I remember right. Maybe a little younger than that, but I don't think much. So when you look at that, you think, okay, mom and dad were influenced by somebody who in turn were influenced by somebody, and so then they influence me, and then hopefully I will influence my children, right? And then in that scope of influence, I have to throw my in-laws in there, like Jimmy and Beatrice Barnes, because that they had an influence on Diane, who, now that I'm married to Diane, right? So then she's got an influence on me. So it's like that ripple effect, and you start seeing and thinking about all the people in life who have touched you to kind of help develop you into who you are. And I don't want you to lose sight of the fact that you're doing the same thing to someone else. And I'm probably going to bore you because you can't read this piece of paper, but I mean, I was just making a list. I started with mom and dad. And there was Daddy Bill and grandmother and Mama and Papa, and then Jimmy and Beatrice, who influenced Diane, who Diane influences me, and helps make me a more spiritual person. I went to a visitation this week for Bubby Smith. Mr. Bubby was from Hornbeak, and we were from Hornbeak, and we were Smiths, and Mr. Bubby, Miss Charlotte were in Hornbeak, and they were Smiths, but we weren't related. They're actually related to Diane's family. But, as I was growing up, he had an influence on me, and I don't mean that he set out with the intention of having some type of spiritual influence on me. He just had influence on me because he was a friend of our family. He took an interest in me. He encouraged me. He would always ask about me. He was an encouraging, at least to me, he was a very encouraging individual. He let me fish in his pond and camp by his pond and a lot of other things. But he's a person who had an influence. And so then growing up, we went to Exchange Street Church of Christ, and you start thinking about people who had an influence on me. Waylon Lawrence, who is the preacher there. Waylon had an influence on me, and he helped shape who I am. He had two sons, Greg and Craig. Greg and Craig, who were in the youth group, they helped shape me. They didn't intentionally start out shaping me, but they were helping to shape me. Dan Pitts, who kind of ran the Oban County Youth A Cappella Chorus, he helped shape me. When I was with Mom and Dad this week, they were talking about Mr. Bill Gillette had passed away. Bill and Betty Gillette, great encouragers when I was trying to learn how to preach. And, and when I was in the youth group, we're always very encouraging people and encouraging me to be involved and do things. So that's that ripple effect that starts to have an impact on me. Richard Jones, who the night I was baptized, asked me when I was going to preach, right? Very important. I mean, he didn't start out with that thinking it was going to be a life-changing event, but it ended up being somewhat of a life-changing event. Jill Hamblin, who was standing there that night and said he'll take the next one, which I didn't, by the way. But the fact that she was encouraging, and she was part of our youth group. And Richard had a brother named Tom, and Tom was he was beneficial to my spiritual growth. And there were other people in the youth group, and I'm not trying to name all of them because I'll mess them up, but there's Elizabeth Hofstadter, and Kim Womble was in there, and Robert and Bart Fuller, and just people who helped shape who I am. And so then I get out of high school, I decide to go to college. One of the reasons I went to college was one of the reasons I went to I got a message from Travis. He's going to have to clarify that 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon. I'm not really, maybe that was a movie. I don't know, Travis. Send me another message and clarify that one. I went to, one of the reasons I went to Lipscomb was Tom Holland, and so Tom Holland was very instrumental in shaping me when I was in college, and I took as many of his classes as I could possibly take. Leo Snow, who was a great influence, had a friend there, Richard Stevenson, and again, didn't know that he was influencing me, but he was. I took Greek with Harvey Floyd, and Dr. Floyd was an incredible influence, or Hebrew class that I took with Rodney Cloud, right? And Mike Moss. I took a lot of my senior year of Greek. Mike was Dr. Moss was my professor, and and even encouraging me to finish out graduate school. I'll never forget, we were driving down the road and he called, and I had not taken classes in a while. I couldn't find time to write my thesis. And he said, if you don't take 2 classes within this time frame, you're going to lose all of your credits. And I remember talking to him, and I said, Dr. Moss, I appreciate the phone call, but you know what? I'm really not interested in going back and being a preacher again, and probably not going to do that. And I hung up the phone. It was a cell phone. And I hung up the phone, and Diane said, who was that? And I said, that was Dr. Moss. He said, if I don't take 2 classes, I'm going to lose all of my credits. And she said, so which 2 classes are you going to take? End of story, took my 2 classes, got my degree, right? But if that had been left solely up to me, I wouldn't have done it. It's that ripple effect. Marlon Connolly, who taught a lot of the speech classes that I was in, Paul Prill, and then you start working with churches. I'm probably boring you, but this is really important to me. There's Tim Logan, who still a great friend of mine, who helped shape me as a minister. Or the first kind of full-time job I had with Gordon McWhirter and the counselor there named Jim Gurley. I called them Dad and Granddad. And after that, their Lloyd Porter was there, and there was Nell Reagan and Becky Wallace, who kind of took me under their wing and showed me the ropes and helped me learn to do the right kind of things. And then when I went to West Huntsville, there was Tim and Marla, who were great mentors, and Byron Laird, who showed me so much about ministry. He was a great retired, semi-retired at that time, and Robin Wadley was preaching there. So Robin kind of took me under his wing and helped me, and Glenn and Mike and Jenny Gunnels and people who took time to influence me and help shape me and help me become, kind of what I became. Outside of the church world, Gary Samanchik, just taught me a lot, right? And friends that I made there, Joe Walkup and Susan and Karen and I'm not trying to bore you with my life story, but I'm trying to illustrate that there are so many people in life that we go into life and there's this ripple effect because the things that they are doing are influencing us, and the things that we are doing is influencing them. So then I come to Tennessee and I meet Bill Orange and Tom and Linda Warnick and Fred and Lori Dance and Larry and Barbara Nash and Kay. I didn't mean to leave you out. Bill and Kay Orange. So, but again, that shapes and molds and that ripple effect, and then coming to West Huntsville. I mean to Clarksville Highway, and I could just start. I could start naming off people, but. But if I start naming off people at Clarksville Highway, I'll forget somebody, and that won't work right? So, because I'm here now, and y'all see me Sunday, but the idea there is every day I create some type of ripple, and somebody creates a ripple that has some type of impact on me. I just want you to kind of think through that process. You don't go through life in a vacuum. You go through life in a way that it affects you, and you affect other people. And kind of stepping back from that, sometimes I just kind of simply want to ask the question, when people think about who I am and what I'm doing, do I have a positive ripple effect in their life? And do you have a positive ripple effect in people's lives? Because so many times we can get so consumed with just kind of looking at our life and just how our decision only affects ourselves, but it's much greater than that, because I don't want to get too heavy here, but I think this is really important. There are a lot of things that we can do for other people in life. And so, maybe you help somebody financially, or maybe you help them through a difficult time in life, and you give them support and encouragement. Maybe you see a talent or an ability that they have, and you help them nurture that, and you encourage them so that they will use that talent. There are a lot of different things you can do. I'm not trying to isolate each one, but what I really want you to think about is there are things that you can do, and things where the ripple effect can help people find a relationship with Jesus. And what your ripple effect is creating is not just this short-term ripple that only lasts for a little while, meaning this world, but you're creating a ripple effect that's going to last into the very farthest reaches of eternity. And so you stop and you think about that, and you can't even think about it in terms of years. You can't even think, something that I do today will have an effect that helps somebody so that their experience 1,000,000 years from now is positive, except even in saying that 1,000,000 years is just like not even a scratch on the surface. We can't even comprehend eternity. But I am making, hopefully, ripples that, like you throw the rock in the water and the ripple eventually stops. You're making ripples that they just don't stop. The effects of that will go as far out into the future as you can go, thinking in terms of infinity. Okay, I mean it just keeps on going. I mean, so think about that aspect of a ripple effect, because I think I can honestly say this: the effects in the ripples that other people have had in my life, that has helped me to the point that my relationship with Jesus is secure, and will be secure into foreverness, right? And you can't put a price on that. You can't. The Visa commercial, right? Priceless. You can't put anything on that. I mean, it is so far reaching and so astronomical and so incredibly important. You can't even figure out how much of a value to place there. And so when you think in terms of your ripple effect, think you are making ripples, that there will be people who spend an eternity with God because of some type of positive ripple effect you put in their life. And when you think about that, then you can start thinking about, man, that's really purpose. I mean, it's so much more important than if you have, a certain kind of car or a certain kind of house or a certain kind of job or how far up the corporate ladder. I mean, all of that stuff, it's important, but it's short-lived. And so in Jesus, we have this ability to influence others and have others influence us, that creates an eternal dynamic. And so when I think about roots, I think about, that relationship with Jesus that gives it stability. And when I think about ripples, I think about how we use that relationship to go out and influence other people in a really extremely positive, uplifting, bring them closer to Jesus type of relationship. And I struggle with that sometimes, because we get so caught up. Like I will tell you today, that unashamedly, okay, my today was busy. Had a lot of stuff going on. And I'm not complaining about that. I'm just telling you, I had a lot of stuff going on. And sometimes when we get a lot of stuff going on, and we get so consumed about what we're supposed to do and where we're supposed to be and how we're supposed to do it and how much time we have to do it, we can lose sight of how important every one of those small things really are. And I just encourage you with ripples, just to kind of take a deep breath and kind of look at your life and see how incredibly important it is when you have a good, godly, positive effect on other people, and when other people can have a good, positive, godly effect on you. And if you have those people who create those good ripples in your life, tell them thank you. Tell them thank you that they are influencing you in a way that makes you be more godly, more spiritual, more focused, more in tune with the things that are really important. So there's roots that give us stability, and then there are those ripples, and the other part of that is I would ask, be pretty conscientious about the way that your ripples affect other people. I don't think I'm nearly as conscientious about that sometimes as I should be. And, part of this class is me thinking I need to do a much better job in that. So give that some real thought. I mean, this hadn't really been a kind of a dig into the Bible kind of class. Ripples doesn't occur, consequences doesn't occur, but there are godly principles behind what we were talking about. So tomorrow when you go out in life, just make sure you create a positive ripple tomorrow. Create a positive ripple. So kind of a short class, but Sunday morning we will live stream at 9 o'clock. We are, if you want to tune in for Bible class, we are going to talk about the end of Revelation 19. And hopefully we will get into Revelation chapter 20, which is the 1,000-year reign. A lot of people have questions about the 1,000-year reign. So if you want to know what I think about that, tune in Sunday morning at Bible class. If I don't get to it, I'm going to go ahead and apologize, tell you we'll get to it the next week, but I think we'll get to at least part of that this coming week. So looking forward to that in Bible class. We have worship at 10 o'clock, so please tune into that. We're looking at Daniel chapter 10, verse 12. The first day of purpose is what we are talking about this Sunday morning. So please, if you can be here in person, please be here in person. If you can be somewhere else in person, I want to encourage you to be somewhere else in person. If you can't be somewhere in person, then please tune in and share worship with us from Clarksville Highway. That's all I have to say about that. So I hope you have a good evening, and I will see you next week. Good night.